Boa was here yesterday.
Well, table, let's take note. Let's turn to page number 9. Page 10. Page 11. Yes, honorable member.
Right, Honorable Speaker, yesterday on page number 11, and it goes to page number 12. Yesterday, the chairman for Committee on
total agreement with the leader.
Yes, honorable member for Boko. Is it the same matter?
Yes, right, Honorable Speaker. Related to that is a discovery that I made during the recess that when documents are late, agreements are late, major transactions are late, and they are referred to in the Hansard
report. Do members have? So if you have, so let's do the correction on the 14th December 2021 official report. Honorable member, I assume that there's no corrections in the report. So in the absence of any correction, the official report of 14 December 2021 is hereby adopted as the true record of proceedings. So I didn't see you, Honorable.
No, but
so
that's okay.
let me hear you.
Not specific to this report, but the issue that I raised earlier, which you said we hadn't gotten there yet, that had to do with official reports and the way that they capture proceedings in this House. And I was drawing attention to the fact that most agreements don't get reproduced in the official report. And we should start a practice of capturing entire agreements so that any day, any year, anybody goes to the Hansard of Parliament, the official report, the person should see every agreement that was made in this House. So that is what I was trying to draw attention to earlier.
Well. Yes, Chief Whip.
Speaker, I thought we were dealing with the votes and proceedings, but a valid point of...
No, we've gone past vote of proceedings.
No, I'm speaking to what you are saying. You are not listening. So, I haven't observed that agreements that are laid, the Hansard department does not capture it verbatim. I haven't made that observation. But if that is the case, then it's a valid point. And Speaker, we pray your guidance to improve.
Item would naturally be parliamentary questions, which we take and hold jealously in the exercise of oversight. So you don't want to run away from the question that where is your Minister for Education? Because as far as we know, the Minister for Education is scheduled to answer questions. Except, Mr. Speaker, to add that as I sat here, Table brought me a letter dated 1st February 2022, parliamentary questions, and a request from the Minister for Education for the rescheduling of the question to 9 February 2022. So assure the members affected that their questions will be rescheduled by the Business Committee for 9 February. Then too, Mr. Speaker, if you read the Minister's letter, the last paragraph, it reads, Honorable Minister will be engaged in an official assignment. Why? Coming to Parliament and responding to Parliament is an equally important official assignment. Where is he? And then you bring us a letter only in the morning when you are supposed to be here to answer questions. Where is the Minister for Education? You don't write to us in the morning. You bring a letter in the morning when you are unavoidably absent to ask for it. But Mr. Speaker, I won't drag this matter. But the members who are affected need to be assured that their questions will be reprogrammed for 9 February and a further assurance from the whip. Are you in charge? That your Minister for Education will be here to respond to those questions. Thank you.
Well, Speaker, this is nothing to debate. I'm in total agreement with my senior colleague, except to say that the very correspondence that the minority leader referenced, coming from the outfit of the minister, is dated the 1st of February. And I engaged the table office. I'm fully aware that this correspondence got to this house yesterday. So maybe that is for your information. The other aspect of informing the members involved, I assure the leader that we will do the needful. I thought that we had had an agreement at conclave, but be it as it may, we will assure all the members involved. And Speaker, I also want to guarantee that I've engaged the minister who has assured that the date communicated will be respected, and he will come to the chamber and do the needful. So, Speaker, I'm seeking your leave to vary the order of business for us to take item number 6 instead of item 5. Speaker, with your leave.
Very well. With the permission, I think we don't need. Both sides have spoken about it. Let me hear the ranking member for education.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these questions were programmed to be answered at the last meeting, and we were expecting the minister to do so, because some of them are urgent questions. Last week, he was to answer these questions. The day he was expected to answer the questions, a letter was brought that he was engaged in an official assignment, so he would not be able to appear before the House. Today, this morning, they have brought another letter that he will not be able to attend. What is the likelihood that on the 9th of February, he will not be engaged in another official assignment? So I think the minister should schedule his program very well so that he can attend to questions as quickly as possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I think we have already spoken about it. We will ensure. Leadership, the whip has already spoken to it, that he will ensure that on the 9th, as he has already promised the House, he will be here to answer the questions. So the order has been varied. We shift to item number 6, statement. Honorable members, the Speaker has admitted a statement from a member for Sisala East, Honorable Amidou China, on a statement to mark the 24th anniversary of the death of Dr. Hila, Limann, the President of the Third Republic of Ghana. So, Honorable Member, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to make a statement on the 24th anniversary of the passing of former President of the Third Republic, Dr. Hila Limann, which occurred on the 23rd day of January 1998. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Hila Limann was born in Gulu, in the then Sisala district of the Upper West region in Ghana. He was born on the 12th of December 1934. Dr. Hila Limann was educated at the London School of Economics and the Sorbonne before embarking on a career as a diplomat in post-independent Ghana, becoming a senior official in the Foreign Ministry after a stint at Ghana's mission to the United Nations in Geneva. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Hila Limann was married to Madame Dora Yaro, popularly called Mrs. Fulera Limann. They were blessed with 2 sons and 3 daughters. Dr. Hila Limann was elected the President of Ghana from 1979 until 1981. He was the only president of the Third Republic in Ghana. It was a brief and politically unstable interlude of civilian government in the succession of military regimes. After a much publicized campaign and a runoff, Dr. Hila Limann and the PMP won the July 1979 elections. Dr. Hila Limann was sworn into office on the 24th of September 1979, marking the beginning of the only government in the Third Republic. Dr. Hila Limann was able to put together a formidable team that worked tirelessly to turn the fortune funeral for him by the then government in 1998. As to what the Limann administration would have achieved if it had been allowed, its 4-year mandate can only be the subject of speculation. But one thing for sure, the 1981 coup headed by Flight Lieutenant General John Rawlings was a derailment of the progress Ghana had chopped up under the PMP administration. Mr. Speaker, Ghana needed a strong leadership to face the various crises which had beset it since independence. Dr. Limann was a man of unquestionable integrity with unique personal qualities and universally recognized honesty. In 1992, Rawlings, under considerable pressure from Western donors, lifted the ban on political parties and held elections. Limann, uncowed by 2 years under house arrest, founded a new party, the People's National Convention, PNC, to fight them. Rawlings won with over 50% of the votes, and Limann came a distant third with 6.7%. Although he remained leader of the party, he chose not to run in the 1996 elections. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Hila Limann remained in active politics until he died in Accra on the 23rd of January 1998. Dr. Hila Limann received many honors during his lifetime and after his death. In 1981, he was honored with the 9th Grand Cross of St. Michael and St. George by Elizabeth II, Queen of the United Kingdom. In 2003, the President Kufuor government divided the then Sisala district and created the Sisala West district in honor of former President Dr. Limann. Gulu, the hometown and birthplace of Dr. Limann, was made the capital of the newly created Sisala West district. Mr. Speaker, in 2010, former President John Atta Mills also constructed a new senior high school located in Gulu, the hometown of Dr. Hila Limann, in honor of the former president, and named it after him. That's Dr. Limann Senior High School. Mr. Speaker, Ghana's premier and foremost university, the University of Ghana, Legon, also had a hall named after Dr. Limann in 2010. The Hila Limann Hall was the first of the University of Ghana Enterprise Limited hostel projects to be completed by the university. It was inaugurated in July 2010, during which the then Vice Chancellor, Professor Clifford D. Boitegu, announced the decision to name the hall after Dr. Hila Limann. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, President Nana Akufo-Addo's government also converted Wa Polytechnic into a technical university and named it after Dr. Hila Limann. The university is now the Dr. Limann Technical University. Mr. Speaker, the principles that underpin the leadership style of Dr. Hila Limann of service with honesty and integrity is outstanding. As we celebrate the 24th anniversary of his death, let's remember the hallmarks of this great leader and be ambassadors of his legacies. May the soul of Dr. Hila Limann continue to rest in peace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to make this statement.
Well, thank you very much. Yes. Yes, let me listen to your honorable member for Naldoli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the statement ably made by the Member of Parliament for Sisala East, Honorable Chenya. It's acknowledgeable that in the short while that Dr. Limann lived as president of this country, he contributed significantly in just the 2 years to the development of this country. As indicated by the maker of the statement, it is everyone's guess what his contribution would have been if he had lived his complete 4 years without interruption, military interruption. But looking at what he did in the 2 years, the short period that he ruled as president of this country, it is evident that he would have contributed significantly to the development of this country. As actors in the political space and members of parliament, Dr. Limann has some attributes that we can learn from, and as people of this country, that we can imbibe. He was sincere, he was honest, he was a man of high integrity, and above all, selfless. He served this country with every energy he had at a time when in Africa, political takeovers, military political takeovers were the order of the day, and leaders sought to make wealth from leadership and taking over countries. Dr. Limann was selfless to the extent that in his person, people describe him as having passed as a pauper, attributable to how selfless he was in serving this country. But as a country, have we honored Dr. Limann enough for the service he has rendered to us? That's a question for all of us to ponder over. As has always been said, a country that does not honor its heroes is not worth dying for. Dr. Limann hailed from Bolu. If we get to Bolu today, probably the only significant thing that you can recall as someone who has ever been the president of this country is the senior high school that has been named after him. And I don't think that that is enough. In the Upper West region also, it is the technical university that has been named after him. And I think it is not enough. He served this country well, and he needs to be honored more than what we are seeing. May his legacy live forever. Thank you.
Very well. Yes, may I hear you? Honorable member for
Lambuse.
Come again?
Lambuse.
Lambuse, very well. Honorable Bright Bachi, you may take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to comment on the statement ably made by my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Sisala East, Honorable Isaku Chinya, on the 24th anniversary of the death of the former President of this Republic, Dr. Hila Limann. Mr. Speaker, glancing through the statement and listening to my colleague, Mr. Speaker, and listening to my colleague, you would see that, you would recognize that, Mr. Speaker, the former president barely did a year in government, because having been elected in 1979, one would expect that he would have spent perhaps a year informing his government. So, for the statement to even estimate that he chalked these successes in 2 years, I think it would have been in 1 year, because he spent some time in putting together his government. And for a government to, under 2 years, achieve some of the things we are told in the statement here, I think that if the president was allowed to work, if there was no military intervention, if the coup hadn't happened, what we saw in the under 2 years would have been so much. And as a country, I think we have all condemned, and we all need to further condemn coups or any military intervention in this country that will set us back in our development agenda. Mr. Speaker, the statement further said that he had ended some economic blockages and also food shortages and provided social amenities to the citizenry. So what then would have been the cause of that coup? Perhaps for some reasons you and I can speculate. Mr. Speaker, I think as members of parliament, as young politicians, leaders of this country, we have to emulate the attributes that have been brought out here about our former president. Integrity is of essence. Honesty in leadership. As a leader, you get your act together. You get your people to follow you when they trust you, when they trust your decisions, when they have that confidence in you, when they know that their leader is sincere and will always go with them in his decisions. So for us to have had such a person to learn from, I think that we all have to make it a point to exhibit similar personal qualities and to end as he has ended. That beyond his leadership, people recognize the contribution he's made to the development of this country, and people think he's contributed his quota, and we are even saying he hasn't been recognized well enough as a leader of this country. Honesty, integrity, outstanding qualities that we all have to emulate. And I just want to add my voice to that of the earlier contributor by calling upon the government to turn its eye on Gulu in particular and the Upper West region in general to make sure that the selflessness demonstrated by the former president, the late Dr. Hila Limann, is remembered and recognized. Very little I have to say, Mr. Speaker, but to also just add my voice in prayers for the peaceful rest of his soul and other souls that have departed. I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Yes, Honorable Member for Sisala West.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to the statement made by my colleague, Honorable Member of Parliament for Sisala East, Honorable Amidou Isaku Chimnia. Mr. Speaker, the former President, Dr. Hila Limann, is a man of integrity, and also he is a man that, in fact, many of the young politicians coming from the northern part of Ghana really learned a lot from him. He being the first ever northerner to have ruled this country, I think it is on that note that those of us, even though at the time he was the president of this republic, some of us were not born, but we heard and we learned, we studied a lot about his kind of leadership. And that really encourages us to also go into mainstream politics. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Hila Limann, as a former president, as somebody that the president or the government must take serious note on his contribution to this country. And being the member of parliament coming from his constituency, that is Gulu in the Upper West region, I would want to urge the ruling government, though they've done enough for the family of the former president, I would want to use this opportunity to take a special look at his hometown. Mr. Speaker, as I speak, if you go to Golu, where the former president is coming from, nothing really shows that that particular town has ever even produced a member of parliament, neither to talk of a president ruling this great nation. And I would want to use this opportunity to call on government to take a special look at developmental issues concerning Golu itself. As we speak, Mr. Speaker, the former president's hometown, that is Golu, the people of Golu, most of them have to travel all the way to the neighboring Burkina Faso to access health facility. And this is something that is very worrying, where he's been buried for about 20-something years since he passed. Nothing has been done around the grave. And that would have served also as a tourist attraction for people to travel all the way to Golu to just have a look at where the former president is resting. But nothing. So I would want to encourage the government, just as my brother mentioned, though they've started, that I want to call on them. We in NDC in the past, we were the first to have built a senior high school and named the school after the former president, Hila Limann. That is Hila Limann Senior High School in Golu. And also, the what technical university today we have is also named after Hila Limann. And so I want to call on the government to do more for us to have in mind that indeed the people of Golu, and for that matter the people of Sosala West, who've ever produced a son who has ever led this great country. And with these few words, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity once again and thank the maker of the statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, may I come to leadership?
Speaker, I will yield to the Honorable Chum.
Yes, Honorable Member for Doma East.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the statement to mark the 24th anniversary of the death of Dr. Hila Limann, President of the Third Republic of this country. Mr. Speaker, some of us read about him. He was an astute politician and a diplomat. Hila Limann, according to the maker of the statement, did a lot when he was. We need to remember him by ensuring that we become good ambassadors to his legacies and ensure that his attitude or principles that underpin his leadership is continued and ensure that it helped grow this country. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I'd like to once again congratulate the maker of the statement and thank you for the opportunity.
Very well, let me come to the minority leadership. Very well, thank you. Honourable members, we have the final statement for the day. That stands the name for the member Honourable Samuel Kuyuta Brakwa on the disturbing resurgence of coup d'etats in Africa's sub-region. Honourable member, the floor is yours. You may make your statement.
Right Honourable Speaker, I shall like to convey my sincere appreciation to you for granting me the opportunity to make this important statement on a matter that troubles and frightens all of us: the alarming resurgence of a new wave of coup d'etats in our sub-region. Mr. Speaker, within the short space of 9 months, West Africa has witnessed successful coups in Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and a fourth apparent failed attempt in Guinea-Bissau only yesterday, the 1st of February 2022, during a cabinet meeting in which Guinea-Bissau President Umaro Sissoco Embalo said has left many soldiers dead. The coup jinx does not appear to be an entirely West African phenomenon. Niger, Sudan...
Honorable members, there are so many meetings in this chamber. Please, let's listen to the statement.
Mr. Speaker, the coup jinx does not appear to be an entirely West African phenomenon. Niger, Sudan, and Zimbabwe have registered themselves on the list of infamy in recent years. Numerous other attempts across multiple African jurisdictions have been recorded. Mr. Speaker, since 1999, Africa hasn't experienced 4 successful coups in one calendar year, as we saw in 2021, just last year. This is what has led to grave concerns, with United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres describing the situation as, quote, an epidemic of coup d'etats, unquote. Mr. Speaker, the tidal wave of coup d'etats set off by the Togolese soldiers in 1963 seemed to roll on unabated, even in 2022. Since the first coup on the African continent, there has been an average of 25 coups every decade between the 1960s and 90s. One would have thought that with the advent of the New World Order, these democratic setbacks would have become a feature of the past. A world order which places premium on democracy, good governance, rule of law, respect for human rights, strong institutions, and the increasing use of economic and political sanctions on those who falter. Ironically, it is this new Western-backed world order that we find coups very much in fashion, particularly in West Africa. West Africa has been a hotbed of these coups. The sub-region kicked off the coup culture on the African continent and has so far held the dubious record of maintaining the lead in coups. The recent successful coup being the January 23, 2022 Burkina Faso military takeover. So far, Mr. Speaker, it seems that apart from Cabo Verde, every single country in West Africa has experienced a coup. Mr. Speaker, there has been a false sense of transition to stable democratic order within the West African sub-region. But any neutral observer will admit that the coups, like our collective underdevelopment, have always been part of us, even if the guns appear to have been silenced somewhat in the 1990s, when hope was emerging about a refreshing democratization wave. Mr. Speaker, ECOWAS, the sub-regional supranational body, has adopted a high-handed post-facto approach, including individual and collective sanctions, border closures, suspension of membership, and threats of military invasion in dealing with these occurrences. Yet, Mr. Speaker, these measures have not served as adequate deterrent. The forces pushing these military adventures seem greater than the potential punishment or risks they are likely to contend with. Mr. Speaker, there is widespread global consensus that liberal democracy is facing a crisis of confidence. Freedom House's 2018 Freedom in the World report found democratic declines in 71 countries, while only 35 registered improvements. The Economist Intelligence Unit has reported similar consistent declines in democracy over the last few years. Those scholars agree that democracy is sick across the world. There is general convergence, in particular the chaotic overthrow of Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi of Libya in 2011. Since then, sophisticated weapons have found their way into the hands of rebels and terrorists who have presented a formidable challenge to African governments. The Tuareg rebels, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and Boko Haram are growing stronger and annexing more territory day by day. It is instructive to note that last month's coup makers in Burkina Faso cited the worsening security situation as a major reason for the coup. They claim to be responding to the massacre of some 50 Burkinabe soldiers in the Soum province by extremists and the government's failure to better equip the army. Mr. Speaker, what is even more intriguing is the popular support and massive jubilation which these coups are greeted with by the African people. A clear paradox of the people's democracy versus popular coups. Mr. Speaker, as a consummate Democrat, I am convinced coups are not a panacea to Africa's hydra-headed and intractable socio-economic challenges. That said, we must all concede that the promised democratic dividend has remained largely elusive on the African continent. The only real solution to the coup epidemic, as the UN Secretary General calls it, cannot be AU and ECOWAS sanctions. African leaders need an urgent, bold and robust Marshall Plan to address regional insecurity, acute unemployment, lack of opportunities for the youth, marginalization, corruption, nepotism, proliferation of arms, insurgencies, dictatorships, economic mismanagement, foreign exploitation, and clueless leadership. Africa's version of democracy, which has been a sham at best in many jurisdictions, and has rather produced a political and economic elite beholden to nepotism, cronyism, corruption, opulence, and high-handedness, often laced with blatant disregard for the rule of law, cannot be kept in place. Mr. Speaker, it is time for the African Union and other sub-regional bodies such as ECOWAS to institute an independent monitoring and evaluation system that assesses the democratic health, stability, and economic well-being of member states for frank peer review as a proactive measure to forestall more coups. This independent assessment must be conducted regularly by credible African CSOs or foundations in a transparent and scientific manner. Their findings must be made public to both enrich the African democratic discourse and also assure citizens that their leaders are paying attention to what really matters to them. This will shed the perception that AU ECOWAS leaders have become a big boys club, only interested in regime protection. Mr. Speaker, the history of coups in Africa teaches us that coups are very contagious and tend to have a domino effect. The horizon doesn't look good. We cannot continue with mere sanction regimes after the fact, and which clearly have deterred no one. I therefore appeal, Mr. Speaker, particularly to Ghana's President and Chair of ECOWAS, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to consider this preventive and preemptive approach, which I have humbly suggested. Mr. Speaker, we must also consider other geopolitical factors. It is emerging that the international community lacks a common position on these coups. It was quite unnerving to see Russia and China on 12 January 2022, only last month, block a UN Security Council statement promoted by France and the United States intended to back ECOWAS sanctions on Mali, following Mali's military rulers' refusal to abide by February 27, 2022 deadline to conduct democratic elections. They are rather proposing to stay in power for up to 5 years. Related to this, Mr. Speaker, are growing tensions between Western allies and Russia over the role of Russia and the Wagner Group in Mali. Further poisoning the atmosphere is a growing popular campaign in French West Africa calling on France to leave and cut all colonial ties. Then there is a recent expulsion of the French ambassador from Mali, which have all created troubling images reminiscent of the Cold War era. Africa's destiny, Mr. Speaker, must be determined by its own people. The attempts by foreign powers to fish in troubled waters on the continent and import their escalating differences is the last thing the continent needs in these trying times. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, may we in Ghana not be complacent, but learn useful lessons from the turbulence all around us and do all in our democratic power to preserve our well-acclaimed stability by addressing our own fault lines of growing unemployment, political intolerance, depolarization, economic hardships, CPI stagnation, unpopular policies, resentment for the political class, and lingering unresolved crimes. We refuse to draw lessons at our own peril. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank you most sincerely for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Yes, let me come to the senior most honorable member for Wa Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this unique opportunity to contribute to a statement like this, reflecting on the coups in Africa, and especially in West Africa, and the challenges therein. Mr. Speaker, coups are a reflection of political and economic failures, and they often happen because there's large discontent which sips from the grassroots into the quarters of the military. For a military person to take advantage of the situation and venture into the seat of government and sack government. The Speaker, even though the challenge is about the failure of an economic, the economy and the political system, the unfolding events after the coup often abuse the system, destroys the system, and are even worse than the situation they come to meet. And so essentially, as the Speaker, the maker of the statement has identified, it's embarrassing for the state, it destroys the goodwill of the state, the esprit de corps that exists in the system is also completely destroyed. Mr. Speaker, there is a historical link that brings about coup d'etats in Africa. From independence, we all fought against the colonialists. The challenge was that the colonialists were abusing the system. They were carrying our efforts, our goods and services outside the country. They were destroying everything that was our culture and our nature. And so a struggle began by a group of people who were colonial, who were fighters against the colonial system. So we call them liberating fighters. Mr. Speaker, they fought until they won in many, many countries, and in fact in all of Africa now. The expectation of the Africans was that the leaders of the liberation would then restore peace, security, and development in the nation. And from independence up to the 1970s, we didn't begin to see all the things we fought for. And so coup d'etat started. They started until there was an intervention by the World Bank, because the coup makers themselves needed money, and they needed to go somewhere for money. So they went to the World Bank, the IMF, for money, and then the issue of structural adjustment came into being. One of the fundamental issues about structural adjustment was to say that, look, if you want government, if you want your government to strive and you want money from us, then you will have to make sure there is democracy in your country. There is free choice, there is liberal economy, and etc., etc. Mr. Speaker, we bought all of them and carried along. And that could be one of the reasons why we are sitting here with the 1992 political dispensation that has given birth to the parliament we have today. Mr. Speaker, so West Africa went through this system, and today, after several countries had recouped from the coup d'etats that happened, we now are beginning to see a new fresh of coups happening. Burkina Faso, as he mentioned, the Speaker mentioned, is a typical case of a repeated coup d'etat within this last last 5 years. And that political upheaval there is also translating into other effects in the rest of West Africa. We've got Mali, we've got Guinea, and earlier on, even there was an attempt in in La Côte d'Ivoire. Mr. Speaker, these things are not things we should look at with glee. We need to look at them with a lot of pain, because the sovereignty of Africa is subjected now under question. The ability of leadership to transform their leadership ability into the benefits of the people is questioned, and Nkrumah is challenged. He has talked about the black African capable of managing his own affairs. Now, if you come face to face with the former colonialists who now will ask you, you are a black man, you said you wanted to make yourself capable of ruling yourselves, and that you now have power. Have you been able to do it, Mr. Speaker? The answer is definitely no, because of what is going on now. So, but the challenge is about leadership, political leadership who want to extend themselves beyond their tenures. And it's happening everywhere. In Uganda, classical case of a leader who has extended his rule over and over. Now 36 years in power, he still wants 5 more years. Mr. Speaker, so we need to begin to question ourselves how leadership operates in Africa. And then ECOWAS need to begin to reflect on its own charter. The ECOWAS charter that prescribes democracy as a way of governance and got all of us to sign, all the countries to sign. We now have to question it. If we can't question it, we will not get the way through. Mr. Speaker, so it's important that these statements, when they are made, we reflect very deeply on them and we begin to do something concrete about them. ECOWAS must begin to question leaders today who want to perpetuate their rule, who want to abuse the democratic systems we put in place, who want to extend their lives beyond their life expectation, and who want to abuse the rights of people. If you cannot do that, Mr. Speaker, then there is a high possibility that with the consistent economic failures now sweeping through Africa, more coups will come. But we don't hope and pray so. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that because coups make it possible for people to lose their rights, create a condition where people lose their rights and free choice, and because coup d'etats bring about uncertainty, we would need to kill the aspirations of members of the military in making coups, and we need to recreate and rethink about Africa and ECOWAS. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much, and I want to thank the maker of the statement for the statement. Thank you.
Honourable members, it appears a lot of members are interested in contributing to this. So if you get opportunity, be snappy so that you can get give time to somebody else to also make contribution. Let me come to Honourable Member for Trouble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to comment on the statement. Mr. Speaker, Africa has tried several systems of governance. We've tried several systems of governance. I remember at a point, Gaddafi has to even ask the non-aligned movement as to how non-aligned are you? And we've aligned to the north, aligned to the west, and tested all sorts of system of governance. And we've also had our fair share of coups happening in Africa. But Mr. Speaker, came to a point where we all decided, including Ghana, that democracy is the way of life. Democracy should be what we should practice, where decisions are taken inclusively, where major decisions are made with major stakeholders and every stakeholder in the country. Grassroots democracy became the choice of work. And at the end of the day, a lot of African countries embrace democracy. Mr. Speaker, those that we're learning from, or those who established democracy that we're learning from, had practiced it over so many years. And one will be tempted to say we don't need to reinvent the wheel. As a matter of fact, if we really want to do it the best way, what they have gone through as a challenge, we shouldn't go through that. As a matter of fact, if we should learn perfectly from them, as we all say, best practice, we should be able to have our stamp on our democracy. But it's becoming a turn of events that, for now, coups are becoming the challenge that we are facing again. The maker of the statement has elucidated some solutions. He's enumerated some way out. And I think that to add to the solutions, education for me is very important. Education is very important. And the mantra of the Millennium Challenge goes that education should be free by a certain year. I think we should champion that cause and get education to every Ghanaian and get education to the West Coast. The insecurity that we are facing as a matter of terrorism or whatever you can describe it is also one area we need to look at. And I think the maker of the statement has made it that the coups or all the international organizations, including United Nations, must look at it and solve it. An emerging Africa where opportunities are. An Africa that we have a lot of natural resources given to us by God. And overexploitation had happened. But we also have some remaining that we need to move on. Peace in a country is only when we can develop the country for the benefit of all. The whole world has become a small village. Inclusiveness, as the UN has said, and not leaving anybody behind, is become very critical and very important. And as a result, no one should just leave Africa like that. Because our contribution to the world progress is very, very, very significant. Gone are the days where we were talking about non-interference. Yes, the sovereignty of every country is there. But when it comes to security for a region, I believe coming together as a region and coming together as nations and coming together as people, that the concerns of Burkina Faso must be the concerns of Ghanaian when it comes to matters of security. Because it is said that the most sustainable democracy is the one that provides the basic necessity of life for its people as a cardinal responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat this, that the most sustainable democracy is the one that provides the basic necessity of life for its people as a cardinal responsibility. And if we merge ourselves together as an African or West Africa, and we trade among ourselves and make sure we have opportunities for our youth, educate our youth, and make sure we have our people working and understanding and getting the knowledge of the principles of democracy and the democratic accountability as a pillar for rolling out democratic principles and rolling out democracy, whatever you are a liberal person or whether you are a conservative or whatever principle you are holding on. What is important is that the democracy must strive. And as it strives and we deepen it, it will bring Africa up. I thank the maker of the statement and I thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yes. Let me come to Honorable Member for Limbele.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me thank the maker of the statement, Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa, for a very important statement which came very timely. The Speaker, in the statement that was made, the maker of the statement, chronicled the history of how Africa went through a cycle of independence and a period of coup d'etats, and somehow found its way back to democracy. And I think it has been explained. Mr. Speaker, it was very, very clear that there was so much hope. The world new order had come, democracy, rule of law, and that was likely to bring prosperity. Mr. Speaker, and indeed a lot of progress has been made. And so it is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that democracy that indeed gave us very good dividends. Mr. Speaker, the maker of the statement was talking about what we are seeing in the world. And it's not surprising. We were warned that we are going to face a period of instability, especially for countries in developing countries. When COVID hit, there were going to be serious challenges. But Mr. Speaker, it is also very those parties. Mr. Speaker, we have to start beginning to look at why our institutions continuously are changing to be so political. Even to the extent that our security institutions are becoming political. Mr. Speaker, these are serious lessons for us to learn. Mr. Speaker, we must begin to really question where all of a sudden when we win power, every institutions, every board, every competent person must be changed because there's a new government. These have not helped us. And it's time for us to look at these basics. It is also important, Mr. Speaker, for us to reconnect with the ordinary people who have given us power. What do they want? What are they asking for? And if that's what they want, Mr. Speaker, we must listen to them. These are very, very important. We have to go back to these basics and make sure we can really begin to bring new leadership. A leadership that is connected with the people, that has a sense of what the people really want. If we are bringing new policy proposals, are they proposals that are good for the people? Have we really consulted enough to be sure that this will work? Make sure we don't throw good money at bad, where we know that we can experiment with a policy, millions will be sunk in, and later we realize this has not had an impact. Mr. Speaker, these are some of the fundamental problems that are bringing the things we are seeing. We believe that we have traveled a long way as a country, that we can protect our democracy. But we can't take what is going around us for granted. We must wake up, and we must begin to try to address these fundamental issues to make sure that our people will be connected and believe in our democracy. That's the only way we stay democratic and continue on our development path. Mr. Speaker, I thank the maker of the statement. Thank you.
Yes, let me now turn to member for Kwadaso.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for the opportunity to add my voice to the statements under consideration. Mr. Speaker, I remember in 2017, when President Robert Mugabe was placed under house arrest, when he was impeached and subsequently overthrown. Mr. Speaker, in 2020 and 2021 in Mali, there were two successful coups in that country. And I think that the appetite for coup d'etat in a part of the world rose from 2017. And we saw what happened last month in Burkina Faso and the third one in Guinea-Bissau. And Speaker, interestingly or strangely, anytime the military takes over, the reasons, if you look into the archives, you realize that the reasons are the same. The same reasons that they proffer to take over: mismanagement, corruption, nepotism, and all that. But sadly, when they take over, you see that all these ills are also perpetuated by them, and in most cases, in extreme proportions. This tells us that military takeovers are not the solution to our ills. And since we come to accept democratic governance, I'm of the opinion that we must do our best to ensure that we guide and guard our democracy in improving our laws. That is why I'm happy that this statement has been made at the right time. Mr. Speaker, if you look at page 2 of the statement, the last but one paragraph, Mr. Speaker, to permit me, I want to read. Mr. Speaker, there is widespread global consensus that liberal democracy is facing a crisis of confidence. This might be true, but the question is, how did we get here? Why is confidence in democracy declining or waning? There's a reason. Probably, as political actors or politicians, we must also do introspection. We must look at our lifestyles. We must also look at our behaviors, our attitudes, our pronouncements. Recently, our majority chief made an observation, and he said that happenings in this house could be a catalyst to military adventurism. And I think that we must take cue from that. If members of parliament are not engaging in fight over ideas, but fights of fisticuffs, then, Mr. Speaker, we are creating the platform for some people to misbehave. You must be very careful. This is a near-hand parliament. It means that if you're not careful, some of our actions and inactions might prepare the grounds for some people to step. You have to be very careful. We need to guard our democracy. We need to set good examples. Our pronouncement, Mr. Speaker, at times we make wild accusations with no empirical basis or evidence. We throw information out there. This person is corrupt. That person is corrupt. With no evidence. The more we are throwing these unsubstantiated information allegations out there, then we are creating wrong perceptions on the minds of people. And this is very dangerous. Mr. Speaker, we will laugh that this democracy is deepening. The last time we had military takeover in this country was in 1981. And since 1992, we have a stable, consistent, reliable, and durable democracy. And all of us, we owe it a responsibility to ensure that we protect it for the best of this country and posterity. Mr. Speaker, in concluding, I want to implore this House that if we have anything to give to this country, that thing must be the safeguard of our constitutional democracy. On that score, I thank you for the opportunity to add my voice to the statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let me invite the lady, honorable member for K2 South, to also make her contribution.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for the opportunity. And if you permit me, I'd like to read what the African Union said in 2013, that it was looking at the Pan-African vision of an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena, and looking at the Agenda 2063, meaning that in 50 years from then, Africa would have moved forward. Mr. Speaker, I believe that it is in light of that, that the Africans in the diaspora have been working hard to have the 6th region. Diasporan Africans want to come back home we in Ghana also gave the opportunity to Africans in the diaspora to come back home. But it seems to me that some leaders in Africa are stuck in the old age, where some of them had to travel to Europe and Americas on the ship, and some in aircrafts. Some of our leaders have forgotten, albeit selectively, that our youth are even willing to walk, to cross the desert in search of greener pastures. Some of our leaders, and I think that if my colleague had sat on his seat, I would have known his name, but the one who spoke in the chair of the former Attorney General, he made reference to education, educate our people. I divert from him a bit, saying that Africa is no more a dark continent. Our young people are getting education. It may not be a perfect education, but they are getting something. And within the technological age, they are exposed to a lot of things. So to continue to take them for granted will put all of us at risk. For as long as leaders who are in their 80s and 90s want to manipulate the system to stay in power, we are all at risk. The earlier we all woke up to the reality that what used to be can no more continue, the status quo has got to change. We've got to try and strive to give equal opportunities to our young people so that the agitations that we are seeing now on the continent can reduce. If you look at what colonialism has done to us, and years down the line, what we are doing to ourselves, ignoring the nature of our borders and how we are one people, and how we take some decisions that affect some sections of the people who live within our countries. Mr. Speaker, we are asking for trouble. We cannot keep patting ourselves on the back for the baby steps that we have been taking. We need to take the bull by the horns. And it is on that note that I am particularly grateful to the maker of the statement, Honorable Okujetu Ablakwa, for the timely and well-researched paper or statement that he has made today. And may it wake all of us up as we represent our constituents to try to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. For the longer we keep it apart, the longer we keep the gap widening, the more we put ourselves at risk. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yes, let me come to a senior member for Buakwa South.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this all-important statement at the behest of my distinguished brother, Samuel Okujetu Ablakwa. Honourable Speaker, I must say that I find this gentleman very research-based and scholarly. And if you pay regard to what is put together by way of statement, it's not watery. And that is how we should do things. I wish to comment on a few things and then I'll resume my seat, since it's captured in a very powerful way what might be an epidemic which is of more serious consequences than the COVID-19. Honourable Speaker, I do not share the view that when a government which is duly elected by the people is underperforming, the solution is to have an overthrow of that government by the armed forces. I don't share that view at all. I share the view, with the greatest of respect, that the underperformance of a government even in the areas of corruption and what we want to talk about, nepotism, and all the institutions are filled by friends and the rest of it, should not be a necessary reason for a coup d'etat. We know that everything begins and ends at the ballot box. That's the history of the so-called civilized countries that we're looking up to. There have been very, very serious challenges in America. Even the Watergate scandal during President Nixon's time and the rest of it. But the armed forces of America didn't overthrow the Constitution of the United States of America and for that matter, booted out the government of the day. I wish to submit with the greatest of respect that I believe it is the sanity of permitting democratic governments to perform, for better or for worse. For a long stretch of time, that has accounted for the kind of economic development that we've seen with, for instance, America and the United Kingdom. But where the constitutional journey is punctuated by coup d'etats, Honourable Speaker, you can see that somebody believes he's a savior. And you see the masses sometimes very excited that a government has been booted out. Because to the ordinary person, every problem that is going through is attributed to the government. And the euphoria of welcoming lawless men as heads of states and the rest of them, eventually, when you do a cost-benefit analysis and do serious economic analysis, as half the time, it is more of trouble than development. The history of even this country of ours will show. But one of the things I heard, which I find very interesting, and I want to share with the House, is that somebody diagnosed the problems of Africa this way, that through the vehicle called coup d'etat, we come to this scenario that in Africa, every coup d'etat is simply described as another madman has taken over the asylum. I feel that's a very caustic language for anybody to have said. A coup d'etat is simply another madman has taken over the asylum. And I believe that should not define our progress as a people. What is very, very, very important also is the hard fact that we have not come to appreciate democracy as it works. We need to deepen our democratic ethos. We need to let people understand that it is only democracy and the rule via the ballot box which has a future for any people. At the end of the day, when you have a coup d'etat, Honourable Speaker, you have this scenario. There is no parliament where laws are critically, in fact, at that point, bills are critically evaluated and the people's representatives convert these bills into law. So coup d'etats are just a recipe for lawlessness, where there's no parliament at all. As a matter of fact, they might not even abolish the court systems. But you could see a situation in which the judiciary becomes an unfortunate appendage of the coup plotters. As a matter of fact, they could even sack most of the judges and find one who is malleable and pliable to do the wishes of the coup makers. Fundamental human rights, the right to a fair trial. Now you can never imprison a man unless he goes through a fair trial. He has legal representation. He is afforded adequate opportunity for his defense. Are all abolished. Sometimes official murders take place in an environment of coup d'etats, where dignified individuals are just arrested by gangsters parading as saviors and redemption pioneers and they are just murdered in cold blood. Honorable Speaker, I wish to end on this note that when we do a proper analysis of what is happening in Africa, all the countries is mentioned. What has happened in Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and I think yesterday, Guinea-Bissau, should not be glorified. I am of the humble view that the sanctions that ECOWAS is pushing so hard should bite. It should have force. All that will give coup plotters comfort for them to get the sad feeling that, oh, now if you take the barrel of it, you take a gun, that is all you need to be in power. I mean, it should give them a huge disincentive to operate. And I do not believe that what is happening should be lost on our country. I am tempted to come to the conclusion that this is the oasis of democracy, this great country called Ghana. And the civility of democracy is on. And nobody will be strong enough to dare or attempt to interfere what is going on in this country. And we should be the best example for the rest of Africa. Honorable, I thank you for this opportunity, and I commend strongly the maker of this important statement. I'm grateful to you.
Thank you very much. Let me come to Honourable Member for Tamale Central. Then I come to leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to the statement made by my brother and the comrade Okujeto Ablakwa. There certainly couldn't have been any better statement made at this material moment than the statement my brother made. We registered several coups in Africa in the 1980s and early 1990s. The extent to which the global coups, Africa alone, constituted almost 90% of the coups that happened at the time. But it is also true that that was not the beginning of coups in our continent. We had this unfortunate specter right after independence. And one wonder whether, if we had never experienced coup in this country in 1966, what would have been the state of our democracy? There cannot be any justification in the overthrow of any democratically elected government.
Honourable Member, hold on. Yes, Honourable Member Husume.
Most grateful, Mr. Speaker. The first coup in this country took place in 1958 and not 66. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, it is most unfortunate. It is most unfortunate, and I wonder whether my friend was actually listening to Honourable Okujeto when he made the statement. There have been several coups. We are talking about successful coups, and I think that my brother should get that. And in any case, we are talking about this country when we had our republic. We are talking about Ghana. We are not talking about Gold Coast. And it is sad, the House of Record, my honourable colleague will stand up and attempt to mislead the public. We are talking about Ghana. We are not talking about Gold Coast. And he's off the line. Right, Honourable Speaker, if we never had the coup in 1966, one would have wondered the state of our democracy. There can't be any justification in the overthrow of any democratically elected government by anybody. There can't be any justification. And that is why I agree with all those who have contributed to this statement, that in as much as we condemn one coup, we can't be justifying another. And let me state, and state it in an unequivocal terms, as a member of the NDC, and as a proud member of the NDC, I have never participated in anything 31st. And I have never participated because I can't be condemning the 1966 coup and I'll be praising another coup in 31st. And that is the principal position, and that is what I ask my friend to take. Right, Honourable Speaker, let me make this point very, very clearly. If you read the Lomé Accord of 2000, and also the African Charter of 2007, Charter on Governance, democracy, and elections. They have all agreed as to what constitutes a coup in Africa. And among them, Right Honorable Speaker, that military coups against democratically elected government. They also mentioned that mercenary actions to replace democratically elected government, replacing democratically elected government by dissidents. And Right Honorable Speaker, and for everybody to listen to this, what for me is very critical, refusal of an outgoing government to relinquish power following a defeat in a fair elections. That if you do that, that constitutes a coup. And we have had several coups in Africa, several insurrections in Africa, several disturbances in Africa that are occasioned by the fact that people went into the polls, they were defeated in a free, fair elections, yet they refused to relinquish power. The Lomé Accord of 2000 and the Africa Charter of Governance and Democracy in 2007 describe such actions as coups. Let us also be reminded that no one should be deceived into thinking that what we experience in those countries cannot experience in our country. May God forbid. But those countries, some of them were very stable. Notable among them is Guinea, that no one expected them to charter the path that they have charted. But today, Guinea is being ruled by a military leader. And that is why they say that when the house of your neighbor is in flames, you must as well look for plenty water to be by you. And in all these coups, they have all have one thing justifying the coups. There has never been a change of a democratically elected government or even a change of government through the bullet or through the ballot without using corruption as a justification. And if I take solace from what my senior comrade, Honorable Atachian, said, that he disagrees that economic challenges, corruptions and others could be a justification for coups. Yes, it could not. But that has unfortunately been the situation. That has been the issue. Anytime there is an overthrow of a democratically elected government, these are some of the issues they use as justification. So we have a responsibility and a duty to prevent that. And that is the reason why in this House, every effort must be taken to defend the legislative arm of our defend Parliament. When you have instances where Parliament is berated, when you have instances where military Parliament, that is an attack on. There can be a government without Parliament, but there can never be a democracy without Parliament. So in as much as we talk about disturbances, and for which we can be a means by which military people can take over the actions even in the House, and the permission for such actions to be taken itself is an avenue for those who want to engage in military coups. So we all have a responsibility and a duty. Right, Honorable Speaker, when we had the challenges in this House over the defending of democratic rights, defending the Constitution, defending the standing orders, for which reason the generality of the people of this country were uncomfortable. Some of us picked information. As some ministers, some foreign embassies asking their non-essential staff to leave the country. Granted that those stories were true, that for me is a danger that is looking at us. And that is why those who are given the responsibility to govern, they must govern mindful of experiences in other countries. They must govern by the very constitution that we have all agreed collectively to use as a basis for which we rule our countries. When people begin to undermine democratic processes, when people begin to undermine the constitution and think that everything must be done to satisfy their whims and caprices, you'll be laying the grounds for these unfortunate incidences to happen. Right, Honorable Speaker, I will conclude with admonishment of myself and my colleagues that let us all endeavor to read a book written by Martin Meredith. The title is The State of Africa, the History of the Continent. We had our own who took few dollars and succumbed and truncated democratic processes in this country. And 1996 coup is a classical example.
Very well. Let him come to leadership. Let him start with the minority leadership.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to have a bite. Mr. Speaker, I think that the Honorable Samuel Kujoto Ablakwa should be commended for such a very timely statement. So, Speaker, coming just a day after a coiled coup d'etat in Guinea-Bissau, and just weeks or months after efforts to perpetuate military rule in Mali, and not long after another coup d'etat in Guinea. Mr. Speaker, somehow I have been personally involved in many of the countries where the coup d'etat have occurred. Indeed, I was personally in Mali on the day of the coup d'etat and heard the gunshots and saw the military move into town. And Mr. Speaker, I had gone there on a mission by ECOWAS Parliament to participate in a mediation effort to resolve the very cause of the coup d'etat. And that was because there was a parliamentary election in which opposition parties had won about 13 seats, but the Electoral Commission blatantly declared those seats in favor of the ruling party, allegedly through the machinations of some leading figures in government and the family of the sitting president. And so the population rose against that particular incident. And the night before the coup d'etat, we had a meeting with the Speaker of their Parliament, who was one of those inappropriately installed as a member of Parliament and then got elected as a Speaker. And he assured us that everything was okay in Mali and that we could go back home and sleep. And that we should meet him in his office the following day in the morning. Early in the morning, as we wore our suits and 3 pieces, getting ready to go to his office for the mediation session, we heard gunshots all over the place. And we were told to stay in our hotel and wait for further instructions. After about 2 hours, we were told that the Speaker had been arrested by the soldiers. Mr. Speaker, we were held up in the country for about 2 weeks because the borders were closed, the airlines were not flying in and out, and we found a way ultimately to leave the country. Mr. Speaker, even before then, I had been to Mali several times, and I was aware of the serious security challenges of the country. About half of the country, Mr. Speaker, is not controlled by the government. About half of the country. And it's not only Mali. In fact, just before the military coup in Burkina Faso, close to half of that country was also not under the control of the government. And indeed, if you go to countries like Niger, which the maker of the statement has alluded to, you will find out that a significant section of that country is not under the control of the government. And let me also add that even a country like Nigeria, our almighty Nigeria, you go to Nigeria and a significant section of the Nigerian territory is being occupied by bandits and people engaged in all sorts of actions that undermine the security of individuals and the state. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the issues in Africa and West Africa are issues that are so fundamental that we must rise up and think through them properly. One key clear message that I have seen traveling through all this, and let me add Guinea. Indeed, before the coup in Guinea, I had no doubt that there would be a problem. Because first, he tried to extend his limit, and when ECOWAS intervened, he ignored ECOWAS. When he extended his limit and organized an election, I was among a team selected to go and observe the elections, and he disallowed ECOWAS from coming to participate in the observation of the elections. So nobody went to observe the elections, and he declared himself and etc. So clearly, one key factor that we must not discount in all this is leadership. Democracy is supposed to be an efficient mechanism for producing the best leadership for our people. But it seems democracy is failing in several respects in Africa in helping us elect the best leadership. We end up having clueless leaders, as the maker of the statement has made. We end up having leaders that are greedy, selfish, incompetent, and do not use the democratic machinery to solve the problems of the people. When democracy does not solve the problems of the people, the social and economic and security problems of the people, people will be discontented and they will hail any undermining of democracy. And that is why I am not surprised that in all the countries that the military coups have occurred, the population has come out to hail and applaud the military overthrows. It is because the people have been living with governments that are clueless, incompetent, are not solving their problem, and all they see is that the members of government or the ruling elite only care about themselves, their welfare, the welfare of their families, and they are feeding fat on the poverty of the people. If this continues and people lose confidence in democracy, nothing will save democracy. Mr. Speaker, democracy is supposed to be a system of checks and balances. If we remove the word checks and balances in democracy, it becomes a hollow democracy. And that is why I get surprised when people call me and say, oh, Edgar, you people in that parliament, what you are doing, you cause a situation where some adventurers will come and then take all of you out of that parliament. Mr. Speaker, adventurers will come if this parliament is incapable of exercising a check on the executive arm of government. It is not when this house is effectively checking the executive arm of government that adventurers will have an opportunity. Everywhere that adventurers have adventured is when they lose confidence in the judiciary administering justice, when they lose confidence in the parliament advocating for the wishes and aspirations of the people, when they lose confidence in the executive using their executive power to solve the social and economic problems of the people. Mr. Speaker, that is when adventurers will move. When the elite sit there and all they do is to fatten themselves, make themselves comfortable, and ignore the sufferings and conditions of the ordinary people of their country. That is what I've seen across the sub-region. And unless the sub-regional organization, ECOWAS, and the African Union begin to go beyond just being interested in whether there was an election to what happens after the person has become elected, whether or not the institutions of democracy are allowed to function effectively, they will lose legitimacy, and when there are coups, they will be incapable of intervening to advise and then be heard by anybody in those countries. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, let me indicate that what we are seeing is not a good development, but it is also a lesson that we must go beyond elections to pay attention to the content of governance. And unless we do this well and do this effectively, and unless democracies are delivering social and economic goods to the people, unless democracy produces governments that can guarantee people basic security, as in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Niger, in Guinea, and etc., democracy will lose credibility and adventurers will easily jettison democracy. On that note, Mr. Speaker, let me commend the maker of the statement. It is a well-researched piece, And I think that all of us should read it, and it will serve us very well. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, let me come to you,
Speaker.
Majority Leadership.
Speaker, permits me to also commend the Honorable Ablakwa, my friend, for the writer. I took a very good look at it. I think it's important, it's timeous, and it's well researched. So I listen, and at the risk of being repetitive, I think the Honorable Achina had done justice to what I want to speak to. But as I listen carefully to colleagues, I tend to wonder if indeed the template put out by the UN in terms of a measuring rod, how successful countries are doing, whether it's time for us to reflect as a world, if indeed these templates do reflect on our governance structure. So GDP is doing well, other economic indices are doing well. Out of the blue, a highway politician comes across, a military intervention activist, and an action is taken. I read about Burkina Faso, and if you look at the economic indices and the progress Burkina Faso as a country was making, then suddenly we have this. So I tend to wonder if in our build globally engaging social engineering, we may have to amend this template that reflect whether a country is doing well or not. Speaker, more often than not, the writings are always on the wall, and the calls are clear. So leadership of the ruling class would have to pay heed to these calls. But I dare say that we need to be careful not to be glorifying coup d'etat. I hear people say that, oh, if the masses, the calls of the masses are not heeded to, poverty, which is an issue, is not tracked, then we are preparing a grounds for coup d'etat. No, it can never be the case. As long as a continent we've agreed to go by the tenets of democracy, we should be ready and prepared to subject ourselves to it. I recall when the Ghanaian people were crying for free SHS. When the Ghanaian people were crying for free SHS, we did not resort to a coup d'etat. We waited and bid our time and waited for the appropriate time and got you out through the ballot box. That should be the narrative. That anybody who believes that he has a better alternative, anybody who believes he has a better alternative should be patient and wait for the appropriate time. Speaker, we are all professing various councils to the continent. But we must also look within. Speaker, it cannot be justified under any circumstance that members of parliament will reduce arguments, intellectual arguments, to fisticuffs. And you have people who are targeting the seat of the speaker. It cannot be the case. And if we continuously engage in that, we are preparing the grounds for the unfortunate. Speaker, so it's high time we also reflect. This parliament, and growing up as a young student leader, I have never witnessed MPs going after the speaker's seat. I have never seen that. Both sides, we need to reflect. The ruling class must reflect, and we are part of the ruling class. You cannot at one time or at one hand condemn coup d'etat, and at another hand, surreptitiously and physically trying to attack the Speaker of Parliament. For me, that is a form of a coup d'etat. Anybody who engages in fisticuffs in Parliament here is fueling and facilitating coup d'etat and must be condemned in no uncertain terms. Speaker, quite recently we were talking about
election of MMDCs. We've been talking about, Mr. Speaker, I plead, if I can have some silence. I listen to colleagues in silence.
Honorable Mutala, you had your chance. Nobody interrupted. Please.
Instead of trying to attack the speaker, who? He should mention names. He should mention names. This is the House of Records.
Honorable Mutala, I have not invited you, please. Please.
He's maligning the 274 members, except himself.
Honorable Mutala, please. Oh,
Speaker. So,
Honorable, hold on. Let me listen to leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my colleague is provoking debate. So if we can stay on the topic, it will help us. Mr. Speaker, it is better for members of Parliament to engage themselves rather than bringing military men into the chamber. Because who brought military men into the chamber? Who brought military men into this chamber? If we engage ourselves, is it not better than bringing military men into this chamber? So we should stay focused in provoking debate.
Very well.
Speaker,
leader, please take you.
Speaker, I think that so we have dissenting views. The rules allows us, if you have dissenting views, to purgate those views. But in our attempt to purgate those dissenting views, we must be civil. There must be decorum in this chamber. All of us are ashamed of what happened. So when we are talking about scaffolds, coup d'etat, we need to make reference to this unfortunate that happened in this chamber. We must condemn it. Speaker, quite recently we were talking about election of MMDCs, and I heard one of my colleagues on the other side speak to the winner takes all. The winner takes all. And he made the point that the ruling class would have to reflect. Indeed, we have to reflect. I cannot understand. At one breath, we say, okay, we want to elect MMDCs. You see the confusion that the ruling class is issuing out. The confusion that we, the ruling class, are issuing out is creating problem for the people who are being ruled. If we say we want to elect MMDCs, at committee level we agree, Parliament we agree, suddenly one political party says I won't agree. If all of us will build consensus and will respect consensus building, I'm sure that we'll be making very good progress. We'll be making very good progress. Speaker,
honorable members, the backbenchers, please.
All coup d'etats that have been staged have ended up in one form of democracy, either a pseudo-democracy or a form of democracy. So indeed, coup d'etat is not the solution. There are, in Africa now, there's a denominator, which is poverty, which runs across. So the ruling class should be seen to be attacking this variable, which undermines our influence, which undermines our popularity. That should be a frontal attack from us. Then apart from that, we want to see civil society groups share experiences. Ghana, we are doing, in relative terms, we are doing very well. In terms of our democratic credentials, we are doing very well. But what can we do to carry the rest of Africa along? I'm sure the top bearers of this continent will be shaking in their graves that all of a sudden, coup d'etat is becoming the order of the day in Africa. It's a very dangerous precedent for us. Speaker, I don't want to be repetitive, but I want to say that we in Parliament of the 8th Parliament, members of Parliament of the 8th Parliament, should reflect the real tenets of democracy. If we believe in dissenting reasoning, and we believe in civility, we believe in decorum, we must reflect, say, you cannot be condemning coup d'etat, you cannot be condemning people who take advantage of the law, you cannot be condemning people who will not resort to the law court, and yet to come here and engage in fisticuffs and expect the good people of this country to praise you. This statement is timely. I want to commend my good friend, but particularly I want to sound a word of caution that if we don't reflect positively and show the way in terms of democracy, we are leading this country into a danger. And posterity will not forgive this eighth parliament if this thing continues. Speaker, with these words, I want to conclude and thank you for the opportunity.
Honorable members, honorable members, honorable Motala, please. Honorable member, First Deputy, do you want to make a statement? Okay.
No, Mr. Speaker, I was advising that some people should be ignored, that we should just learn to ignore them.
Very well. Honorable members, you've brought statement to a close, and I would like to thank the makers and the contributors. What I may add up is, as Honorable Atachia said, no matter what the situation is, we are better off in a democracy than coup d'etat, no matter what. So please, let us be tolerant. If a government is not, per your standard, is not doing well, please be tolerant. The time will come for you to change the government based on your own standard. So please, this coup and this coup is not the best. So let us be tolerant. Thank you very much, honorable members. Yes, let me come to you, honorable Chief Whip, for any indication.
Speaker, I will seek your leave for us to take item 8, presentation of papers. And from I to VIII. However, Speaker, with your leave again, I'll effect some amendments. Speaker, if you permit me.
Very well. The leave granted.
Item 8A, starting from II. No. Speaker, from III. The year should be 31st December 2018. And it runs through 2000. Next item also is 2018. V is also 2018. VI 2018. VII 2018. And the last one, VIII 2018.
Are you saying VII and VIII all 2018?
Exactly so.
Very well.
Speaker.
Very well. So who is laying it? The majority leader is not here.
Yes, I will seek your leave to do the laying on behalf of leader, the majority leader.
Very well. So, honorable members, we move to page number 5, item number 8A, by now the Chief Whip. I.
Report of the Auditor General on the statement of foreign exchange receipts and payments of the Bank of Ghana for the half year ended 30th June 2019.
Honorable members, the report has been duly presented. It is referred to the Public Accounts Committee for consideration and report. I.
Report of the Auditor General on the consolidated statements of foreign exchange receipts and payments of the Bank of Ghana for the year ended 31st December 2019.
Honorable members, the report has been duly presented. It is referred to the Public Accounts Committee for consideration and report. I.
Report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of Ghana, public boards, corporations, and other statutory institutions for the period ended 31st December 2018.
Honorable members, the report has been duly presented. It is referred to the Public Accounts Committee for consideration and report. IV.
Report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of Ghana, ministries, departments, and other agencies of the central government for the year ended 31st December 2018.
Honorable members, the report has been duly presented. It is referred to the Public Accounts Committee for consideration and report. V.
Report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of Ghana, technical universities and polytechnics for the period ended 31st December 2018.
Honorable members, the report has been duly presented. It is referred to the Public Accounts Committee for consideration and report. VI.
Report of the Auditor General on the accounts of district assemblies for the financial year ended 31st December 2018.
Honorable members, the report has been duly presented. It is referred to the Public Account Committee for consideration and report. VII.
Report of the Auditor General on the pre-university educational institutions for the financial year ended 31st December 2018.
Honorable members, the report has been duly presented. It is referred to the Public Accounts Committee for consideration and report. And finally, VIII.